Right. When my mother was in hospice, and it was literally like a 5-minute drive from where I grew up, where she lived since 1956. It was like a 5-star hotel, and I thought to myself, "Wow, this is the way I want to go." But let's talk about the anxiety that people have. Not the person who's dying. I mean, we'll talk about that person as well. But the people that are at bedside and are very anxious and very worried that their loved one is suffering. They see certain things, they hear certain things. It gives them anxiety because they're in distress, they're suffering. Just kind of walk us through some of these things, and disabuse us of the notion that that there's something unusual going on here with a dying person.
Yeah. Our society had done a really bad job or really good job actually, at hiding death from us, and then showing a version of death on TV or the movies that is not real. The person gives some big monologue and then they close their eyes and they just die. And that's just not how it happens. I mean, maybe every 1 in 100 does that happen. And that's still kind of often, but the majority of people dying go through the same things. So it's a phase called actively dying. It's the last phase of life. And no one is used to seeing it. Even other healthcare workers, even other people. When I was an ICU nurse, I never saw what it looked like when someone was actively dying. Because in the ICU, when someone was taken off machines, it usually happened much quicker, the death. So you didn't see this process. Whereas when you're dying a natural death, it's from something, but you're naturally allowing it to happen. You go through this process. And people who are not used to seeing it will always, not always, but mostly always will associate with what they're seeing with suffering. And it's not. So everything that you see at the end of life, most people at the end of life will be unconscious, usually not waking up. Their eyes and mouths might be open. And that's because the full body is relaxing. All those muscles are releasing. And it takes muscles to close your mouth and to close your eyes. So people aren't used to seeing that. So they see their loved ones with this weird look on their face, right? And kind of no one home in their eyes. That can be alarming, but that's a really natural process that naturally happens.
Or the silent scream. Tell us about that.
Silent scream, yes. So our bodies are metabolically, physiologically shutting down systematically. While that's happening, their consciousness, the thing that kind of their essence that makes them, right, is likely not there. How do we know that? Because they're not really responding to us. You can kind of see their eyes. They're fixed. They're not looking at us. They're not interacting. But they're still making these strange faces or a silent scream. Their mouth is gaping open. Their eyes are wide open. No, that doesn't always happen, by the way. The whole silent scream where they look like they're screaming, but nothing's coming out. That doesn't always happen, but I like to talk about it because it happens enough that it makes people think, oh my God, their last moment, they looked like they were screaming.
Right.
Well, where were they going? What was happening? And it's truly a biological response to the body because it's just a full body let go, a full body, just everything is releasing. So their muscles are fully relaxed, fully releasing. So their mouth's hanging open. Their eyes could almost fly open like they're scared. But really, it's just because the muscles are releasing. And it takes muscles to keep our eyes closed. So there's all these biological things that happen that are very natural that people don't know that. So they put emotion to it because it's easy to, because it's their loved one, and they want to try to understand it. So they're trying to think of reasons why. And really there are usually biological reasons why, usually. The changes in breathing, almost everyone will breathe differently at the end of life. People will always look at that and think that their loved one is suffocating or trying to breathe, but they can't. But that's really not what's happening. What's happening is our bodies are metabolically shutting down. And it changes your blood chemistry. And because it changes your blood chemistry, it makes you breathe different. So again, the person's likely unconscious and the body is systematically shutting down. So it changes the way we breathe to basically help us die. But the breathing can look like people will describe it as guppy breathing or gasping for air.
The death rattle?
The death rattle, that's also something that happens that's also different. So the death rattle is we call it terminal secretions. That's the actual name, and that can be very minuscule amounts of saliva. So you and I are sitting here, our body's automatically making saliva to keep our mouth moist, and then our bodies, when healthy, automatically swallow all that saliva. I just did it without trying. When we're dying, that stops. So the body keeps creating moisture in the mouth, which is good because the body knows, hey, dry mouth is uncomfortable. So we're going to make a lot of moisture. But then the body doesn't swallow the secretions. So it sits in the mouth.
Yeah. That takes a lot of effort to swallow. I mean, we don't think about it, but when you have to think about it, I mean, it's very complicated.
Yes, it's very complicated. Yeah. And there's tons of muscles in the neck to make sure it goes down the esophagus and not down your trachea to the lungs. So there's all these things that, again, at the end of life are relaxing. All of them are relaxing. That's why people, so it's really hard to swallow, and the brain's kind of cut off. Like the brain's not really automatically making you do things anymore.
Right.
So that little bit of saliva can collect in the mouth. And then again, your mouth breathing, because your mouth's hanging open because it takes muscles to close your mouth that are relaxed now. So your mouth's hanging open and your breath is going over that secretion. So it's creating this loud, awful gurgling noise. And if you don't know what it is, families automatically are like, it's coming from their lungs, they're drowning, they're suffocating, and it's just not true. And it was just so surprising to me how no one knows, like no one talks to people about this. Almost everyone's gonna die, but almost everyone's gonna have at least one or two experiences of a loved one on hospice or they're on hospice.
Yeah.
No one knows about any of this until it's happening in the moment. And even then, sometimes they don't get the education they need to know that like their loved one isn't suffering. So hence why Hospice Nurse Julie was born and my book was born, because I want people to know before it happens so they can spend that time with their loved one who's dying, those last few days, few moments, few weeks, whatever, not in total fear. It's still normal to have some fear, and it's still just uncomfortable and sad and all of the things, but at least you know what's happening. So you don't feel like that surge of anxiety the whole time.